Welcome back to Two Geek Soup, the geek culture podcast where pretty much anything can happen because we are basically making this up as we go along. Today in the studio, I have my friend Chris Bowser with me.
Hi.
And I'm John Vinalas, your host of some description. I failed, and my quick adjective search didn't work for anything that would actually apply to me. So anyway, here we are. And today we're going to be talking about probably all kinds of things. We're going to talk about The Incredible Hulk, our number 2 in our Marvel Cinematic Universe rewatch. We're going to have some guaranteed good news. And to kick things off, Chris, why don't you tell us a little bit about what got you into geek culture to start with?
What got me into geek culture? Well, when I was younger, I don't know. I would assume that this would be just any normal boy. Got into comics, mainly because there were cartoons on a page, and I liked cartoons. Remember an Easter basket, and it had X-Men number 1. I guess it'd be the Uncanny X-Men. It's the one from the 90s. The number 1.
Yeah.
With all the covers. And that was just by chance.
Yeah,
that
the
I
gatefold
got
cover. That's cool. Yeah, X-Men Volume 2.
Yeah,
that was a big deal. That's actually the best selling comic single issue of all time.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I got it in an Easter basket.
There you go.
That's how cool I am. And then I just followed off and on here and there. I remember watching the live action Spider-Man from the 70s?
Oh wow. Yeah, but that's really obscure.
Yeah, it was like reran on there was this old channel called USA.
Right.
I think they reran all the episodes on that, so I watched all of them. Rented Greenville used to have this video rental place, and they had Spider-Man and Friends. Rented, where the room turns into this
Spider-Man, His Amazing
center.
Friends. Yeah. Do you know? Did you see the very first episode of that?
If I did, I don't remember.
So there's a reason why they have all of this ridiculous technology hidden away in this otherwise nondescript apartment. Tony Stark gave it to them.
Really?
Yeah, in the first episode, he totally kitted them out with this whole adventurers, crime fighting equipment headquarters hidden in Aunt May's second floor apartment.
Tony Stark does good, but he's so irresponsible.
That is irresponsible.
Give all these kids all this cool and dangerous stuff.
Here, teenagers, just go.
Yeah. So I just followed, from that, and just off and on, got excited with the Iron Man and all the different movies. Never really got into Superman. I watched the Christopher Reeves movies; those were cool. Didn't watch any of the new ones up until Batman versus Superman.
Yeah, I have feelings about that movie, but apparently you didn't mind it.
I enjoyed it. I was forced to watch the extended cut, which I guess is 3 hours long. But it was good because I used to love Batman and hated Superman because he had all the powers and the thing that could kill him wasn't even from Earth. But then I watched that movie and I actually felt for him. I had compassion for him, and then I disliked everything about Affleck's Batman.
See, here's the funny thing about Affleck's Batman, and I've said this before, I'll probably say it again. I think that the best Lex Luthor character that we've seen so far in the DCEU is Bruce Wayne in Batman versus Superman.
I can see that. I agree with you. Because he was Lex Luthor. He had that one track mind, this is my Moby Dick.
Yeah, well, and he says that line, if there's even a 1% chance that he's not, he's against us, we have to take it as an absolute certainty. And that is lifted almost exactly from things that Lex Luthor would say in the comics. So anyway.
Right.
All right, so just kind of comics in general.
Yeah, pretty much. I didn't really get into a lot of other stuff. I mean, the only thing that I really geeked out over was music, and a very small chunk or a genre. It was
Okay.
punk rock.
Uh-huh.
So like I would read everything I could on the old punk rock.
Like who?
Obviously the Sex Pistols, Ramones, the Dead Boys, who are actually I think from Cleveland if I remember. Like Sham 69.
Okay. We're
Angelic
already
Upstarts.
veering into territory that is totally unfamiliar to me.
Yeah, so it's like the street punkers would know all this stuff. But I never dressed like a street punk either. I just dressed like a 90s skater kid who was always too fat to skate.
So you grew up in the 90s. Did you watch all of the great superhero cartoons of the 90s, like the Batman and the Spider-Man and the X-Men series that were running at that time?
Not Batman. X-Men, I watched every chance I could.
Well, of course you did, because those were the X-Men, like in the comic that you had.
Yeah,
like it was
exactly
those costumes and those stories.
Yeah, it was great. I watched New Kids on the Block.
Oh my gosh,
because they were one of my favorite bands when I was young. So I watched all those cartoons. I can't remember a lot.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So at this point, what would you say that you are like a geek about? Like, where do your like sort of geeky interests lie at this point in your life?
Well, theology, and I'm growing more into that. Like I'm studying the relationship of law and the gospel right now, and I'm like really excited about that. Like I started reading a couple books, and I'm actually on track to finish these books. Where that's rare.
Okay.
And unfortunately, that's pretty much it. Because like the
in terms of like what would commonly be like sort of in the realm of geek culture.
Oh, yeah. Just still a very loose relationship with all these things.
Okay.
So like I did not know that there was a new Star Trek until you told me. And like, but
Okay.
I didn't know that. I didn't know like the release dates of all these movies that were coming out, like Spider-Man: Homecoming. I didn't know that. I thought we were still waiting on that, and stuff like that. I just am kind of not distant. I just feel like out of the loop.
Right. Okay.
And even
so you kind of have
music.
So you kind of have an affinity for geeky stuff, but you're not like super into any like particular thing.
Right.
Okay. Good enough. But you did start watching the Star Trek original series not too long ago.
Yes. So many, many years ago, I watched one of the movies, and I can't even tell you which one it was.
Do you remember anything that happened in the movie?
Yeah,
Anything at all?
I remember Kirk had gray hair. His hair was graying.
Okay.
And Uhuru was doing some sort of weird dance.
Oh, my gosh. You watched the worst movie.
Yeah.
That
was when I was younger.
Oh, my goodness. That was Star Trek V, and that is universally reviled as the absolute worst movie.
I don't remember much from that, but then...
Apparently, Uhura with the fans is the thing that made the impression on you. That's pretty funny.
I did watch... And then a few weeks ago, I watched the first Star Trek movie.
Oh, the motion picture.
The motion picture. And
yeah.
I was drawn in, and I loved it.
Really?
I loved that nothing happened like the first, I don't know, hour.
45 minutes to an hour? Yeah.
Nothing. It was so much great story that I was just like, I was fixated on the screen. And then, the action happened. I was like, yeah, let's go back and watch all the original ones.
So, you may not know that the Star Trek The Motion Picture actually was adapted from ideas that were supposed to become a second Star Trek TV series.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. It was going to be called Star Trek Phase 2.
Okay.
And yeah, and and so the Will Decker character was going to be there because I think because they were having trouble like getting Leonard Nimoy to come back, so he was going to be the new second in command. And yeah, so that's a whole story for sort of what was happening in sort of behind the scenes of Star Trek leading up to the motion picture. But I think probably a lot of Trek fans would put the motion picture like as a close. Maybe not anymore. After Into Darkness, I think sort of the rankings of what the worst movie are have shuffled a little bit.
See, I've read that the newer ones are more action than they are story.
Yeah, see, the new ones are just fine in terms of being like sci-fi action movies,
Right.
but they're not really good Star Trek.
Oh, that's not good news.
Because they are focused on the action, and they're not nearly as interested in what makes Star Trek so interesting to a lot of its fans, and that's where it like grapples with these big ideas, right? And so, even in Star Trek the motion picture and in Star Trek 5, like it wasn't all about the action. Like we're kind of like trying to deal with some ideas here in terms of, in Star Trek 5, like, this guy is searching for God, essentially.
Right.
And so anyway, what's your experience been like watching the original series? How does it hold up in terms of like the visual, like the aesthetic of the show and the special effects and so on?
I was actually talking about this with my friend Ben, because he loves like Into Darkness and all these new movies because of the visuals. Mm-hmm. And I said, dude, you got to put these things into context. And for the context of the original series, they were still so far ahead of their time. Like, there's a plastic Enterprise flying through space, but like they made it fly through space, and the phaser guns, and then the teleportation. Mm-hmm. It was all. I love it.
Yeah,
I don't see it as like, wow, this is not up to Marvel or DC, or all these different
contemporary standards.
I'm just like, this is so good, like, and that, because I think part of it is because it's overshadowed by the acting and by the story. Mm-hmm. And by William Shatner, like I was
just about to say, it's kind of hard for William Shatner kind of not to overshadow anything that he's next to, isn't it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I just want a William Shatner bobblehead doll, not in his regular street clothes.
No, not a Captain Kirk, a William Shatner.
I want William Shatner.
So, what's your favorite episode of the original series so far that you've seen?
Okay, so I've only watched, I think, 6 episodes.
Oh wow!
So I'm trying to limit I'm doing like one a day.
Oh okay.
I can't remember what it's called, but at the end they jump back 3 days. And you know what? I'm destroying it. I'm not a real fanboy, but because that was supposed to be a 2-part series, and the other part was On the Edge of Tomorrow or something like that.
Oh, City on the Edge of Tomorrow.
Yeah. And
that is widely regarded as one of the best episodes of the original series.
Yeah, someone asked Quentin Tarantino, because they were talking about the new Star Trek movies, and he was talking about how, well, these guys are playing like William Shatner in these roles and Spock, and they asked Tarantino, what would you do? He's like, I would go back to one of the original series, because there's like, grab one of those episodes and make that into a full length movie.
Yeah, if they adapted City on the Edge of Forever, then that would be, or even if they or City on the Edge of Tomorrow, or even if they just took the Guardian of Forever is the name of that artifact that they go through. If they used that as like a time travel like device or something. In one of the new movies, maybe that would be able to sort of give it a little more heft thematically. Yeah. Now I've heard, and I don't know if this is still happening, but as Star Trek Beyond was coming out, before it even had come out, there were rumors that they were already planning for a 4th movie in this new series. And that Chris Hemsworth was going to come back to play George Kirk again, and it was going to be a time travel story again. So we'll see what ends up happening with that. Well, why don't we go ahead and start talking about the Incredible Hulk then?